my name's Aymenn Jawad Al-Tamimi. I am a doctoral student at Swansea University, where my PhD focuses on the role of historical narratives in Islamic State propaganda, which is looking at not only the official propaganda they put out, but also internal debates that came about within the Islamic State about the group's rise and fall. So I also am a research fellow at the George Washington University's program on extremism, where I'm assisting them in the archiving, redaction, and analysis of the ISIS files, which were the hundreds of thousands of Islamic State documents recovered from northern Iraq by Rukmini Callimachi of the New York Times, and then all the documents were made into digital copies and scans and then handed over to the university, to George Washington University, to work on. Anyway, yes, in December 2019, I had the experience of being detained by the UK counter-terrorism police at Gatwick Airport. So I was actually going at the time first to Costa Rica, and then on to Mexico, where I was going to see a friend in Mexico. So I was going to stay in Costa Rica for a few days just for tourism, then go on to Mexico. But to give some context, the reason I chose Costa Rica was because since 2015, I'd had my ESTA, or Electronic Status Travel Authorization, to go to the US revoked. I wouldn't actually be entitled to anyway because of the fact I've been to Iraq and Syria during the last 5 years, but it was revoked before that regulation came in. And the result is also that I applied for a US visa in January of 2016 and got stuck in something called administrative processing for well over 4.5 years now. And with the result that I've had to try to reapply for a visa, even though I was never given a final decision on my visa application from 2016. The point is that clearly the US authorities put me on some kind of watch list or database. Not an outright ban, I don't think, but some kind of watch list. So actually, when I booked the flight to go to Costa Rica first, instead of directly to Mexico to see my friend, who works as a journalist there, I did that with in mind that I thought the flight would not go over US airspace. But as it turned out, the flight does go over US airspace from the UK to Costa Rica. And then, so the result was actually when I was checking in for the flight, the people at the check-in desk had to make a call to, I think, to DC and give my name and details. And so they gave me the flight ticket. So, but they said you'll be asked some questions at the gate, right? Now, what I didn't realize is that instead of just some extra questions, that the Americans had made some kind of referral to the counterterrorism police saying, essentially, this guy might be a terrorist. So then the result was at the gate, I was approached by two officers from the UK counterterrorism police. They were in civilian clothing, and they asked me why I was going to travel to Costa Rica, and I said, well, tourism, and also to go around North America a bit. And then they said, one of the officers said, "Oh, you don't have a visa to North America," and that was, clearly just some way to try to catch me out, as it were. And then what he said was that, well, because of your demeanor, I have to detain you under Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act 2000. And so the result was I did not get to board the flight, but they took me to some room underground in Gatwick Airport. And then the result was I was being held for up to under that detention under Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act to the port of entry or to departure port, like an airport. You can be held for up to 6 hours, and I ended up being held for the maximum of 6 hours. Not only that, but they took my DNA, took a swab of DNA. They took my fingerprints from both of my hands and my thumbprints as well. And they also took 8 photos of me, each time facing a different side of the compass, as it were. So straight on, turn one angle, and then all the directions of the compass, essentially. And then they did a search also, make sure I didn't have anything on me. And then they also took my computer and phone, and also some research materials I had for my PhD with. Now, under this, being detained under Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act, the significant thing about it, in comparison with, say, being conventionally arrested and detained, is that you're not actually considered under arrest when you're detained under Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act. You're considered detained as opposed to arrested. And also, you are not considered as being under investigation, which is also a crucial point. So because of these reasons, you actually don't have the right to remain silent, and you actually have to cooperate fully, and you have to give any information that they request of you. So that includes, for example, the passwords to your electronic devices. So I had to give passwords both to my laptop and to my phone. And then through the course of the 6 hours, then I was interviewed by 2 officers, the same ones who'd initially come to me at the airport, and at the airport gate. And they asked me a variety of questions, such as particularly focused on my travel history. So, for example, when I mentioned places I'd been to in Europe, I'd said I'd been to Croatia and Bosnia. They asked, well, did you go there for religious deepening? Because, Bosnia is a Muslim country. And of course, the answer to that was no, I went for tourism purposes. But it said, well, given Bosnia's history, is there a reason connected to religion you might have gone there? And I had to tell them no. The answer to that was no. And they did ask about my other travel history. I was very open about it, including my times in Syria and what I'd done there, to whom I'd spoken. Also about interviews I've done with people on Telegram or on social media applications, and about my various writings. They did ask about the material I had, which was an Islamic State book on precisely historical narratives, and again, I gave an honest account of that. Yes, the results. So there were 3 interrogation sessions, as it were, and each time they would go out of the room, and clearly they were relaying information to their superiors. And then each time they would have another officer sit with me, not part of the interrogation, but someone to chat with, strike a rapport, engage in various kinds of conversation. So I mean, our conversations ranged from my conversations with the officers sitting with me ranged from discussions of ancient Germanic languages, one of my philological interests, to also even up to video games. So I tried to keep a friendly face, as it were, and I didn't want to create antagonism and cause potentially more problems for myself. So in the end, actually, they came back to me, and I was actually free to go. So actually, what happens is they could decide either to arrest you after they can decide to arrest you after they conclude what is called the examination, or they could let you go. They did let me go after the 6 hours, which is the maximum time you can be held for. But then they said that we have to retain both your computer and your phone, and also the book that I was using for my research. And I was given the understanding that it would be held for up to 7 days, which is actually something that can happen under this act, under Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act as well. Is that an examining officer, meaning the ones who interrogate you, or the officers who interrogate you, can they can retain an item for up to 7 days for the purpose of further inspection of it. But if they decide actually that you're under criminal investigation, then they'll of course hold it for a longer time after the 7 days, and they can retain it as long as they want. So in the end, I didn't know how long it would be held for. I was left without a phone or a computer. Had no real means of communicating with anyone. And I did eventually end up going back to Swansea. So that was my whole flights out, my things I'd booked. Lost, I think, over £1,500 out of it. But during that time, during the time my things were held, and it ended up going beyond the 7 days. I mean, I had, which was very much a surprise to me. And I was then told that my things had been referred to another police force. It turned out to be Thames Valley Police, and then they were examining my phone, my computer, and the other item, and then there was apparently a police inspector involved in that. So it went beyond the 7 days actually, and I didn't understand what was going on. I was very frustrated. And I did actually end up writing about it on my blog, and that actually got quite a wide reception. But then during that same day after I'd published it, the inspector involved did actually get back to me after I'd repeatedly tried to make inquiries, and made clear that they wanted to be satisfied that all the materials I had on my item for the item, and also things on my computer and phone, that I had them for purposes of research and not actually, for terrorism purposes, because possession of information deemed useful to a terrorist can be considered a criminal offence in the UK, with exceptions of, for example, collecting it for journalistic purposes or collecting it for academic or research purposes. So in the end, actually on the same day around 4 p.m. So this has actually been around, I think, 10 days or so after I'd initially been detained. They said, the police inspector said that there's no more need to retain your items, so we'll return them to you. So they were returned to me, and that actually concludes that story. But the thing is that I'd lost out on going to see a friend. I mean, I did have the chance technically to fly over on a week after to Costa Rica, a week after the initial interrogation. But the problem is that I would have had no phone or computer with me. No one would have had any idea of tracking my move, knowing where I was. But secondly, also I had no. I'd already booked, say, internal flights during the time I was going to be out there, so that would have all gone to waste as well, and hotel bookings, for example, and trip bookings. So in the end, I lost out a lot of money on that, and also I'd been held for the maximum amount of time. They presumably got a database entry on me of some kind. But I don't know actually if this means every time I try to go on a flight over US airspace, some other referral about me gets made, and then they detain me again and again. I mean, I don't know if that will happen the next time. And also, I'm still completely in the dark about visa applications that I made a long time ago. So whether because presumably, of course, the UK counterterrorism police would have conveyed the message to their American counterparts that they said they examined this guy and didn't find any link to terrorism. But I don't know if that message then goes to people who also looked at my visa application. I don't know about the extent of information sharing, and so that's actually means I'm still in the dark on that. And only apart from being told that I should reapply for a visa and that supposedly the original administrative processing had been done, but I somewhat doubt that. I think my application's been lost in some kind, long time ago. Yeah, so that actually summarizes my experiences, and I hope that was useful.